Hello, everybody. Welcome to Success Defined. I'm Ben McDonald, and today we are joined by Jeff Pell. After serving 9 years in the U.S. Navy, Jeff built a great career in logistics and sales until a recent pivot led Jeff to become president and owner of Amada Senior Care of Knoxville. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you.
So before we even get into the conversation, I want to thank you for your service in the U.S. Navy. We all appreciate it. And that's exactly where I want to start. So let's go back to that experience and describe that experience for the viewers and listeners for us.
Yeah, my time in the Navy was spent, after boot camp, I went through kind of an A school where I learned the trade that I would have in the Navy, which was as an electronic tech. And then I went out to the fleet. So I was in the fleet for 5 years. I was in the first Gulf War. I really wanted to see the world and got a chance to do so in the Navy. Went to several different countries and it was a great experience for me, being from a small town and really kind of no brothers or sisters. Suddenly I get out on a ship and I'm living with 300 people and really just kind of learning how to survive in that atmosphere.
Yeah, a little different from an empty household.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what were a couple of those top 1 or 2 habits or lessons that you were able to take from the Navy and apply it to your career?
I think probably the first one that I was able to take was just being flexible. In the Navy, you can be sent somewhere on we always had our sea bag with us because we could be sent anywhere.
Yep.
And so just being flexible, there were times when I was planning on coming home and we got turned around in the middle of our trip back and we went out and spent 3 months. I remember one time we were headed home and I went out and wound up having to, because something broke out overseas. I spent 3 months. Right. We had to go actually across the Atlantic that time and spend 3 months there when we thought we would be home. So really flexibility, is something that I learned a lot when I was in the Navy, and also just the value of waking up early. I'm kind of a night owl.
Okay.
But in the Navy, we had to be up every day early and really just waking up early and working really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially if you're naturally a night owl, that's going to be a shock at first, but probably a habit that has continued throughout the majority of your life.
Yes. Yeah.
With that flexibility, do you have a story or a memory of being in your career after the Navy where that experience directly applied to you, where you had to be more flexible when something was just thrown your way that was unexpected?
Yeah, I spent many years in the logistics industry, and I worked for a couple of LTL carriers. I worked for some 3PLs, LTL carrier, and then I worked for a company that is mostly truckload, but it's all logistics. And there were many times where maybe a client was being on the sales side would call me upset with an issue, and really just kind of finding a way to make things, finding a way to solve their problem. Okay. Whether it be a claims issue, where there was maybe whatever their product had got delivered, but there was an issue with damage. Finding a way to resolve those issues a lot of times took flexibility. Sometimes I may handle that situation by maybe we handle that situation by giving them the claim. Sometimes we handle that situation just by assuring them that in the future the service would be different. But really, you had to be flexible in those positions.
Yeah, no, absolutely, that makes sense. So as we continue into the sales and logistics aspect of your career, looking back now, what's one thing that you really wish you knew at the beginning of your sales career?
Yeah, I just think the value of being persistent. I kind of underestimated that in the beginning. I can think of an example where there's a large manufacturer here that's local, and I called on them for many years. 3 years, I called on them every quarter. Never got any business at all from them. And then one day, after calling on them for 3 years, they called me one day and said, "Hey, we'd like you to participate in our bid." And then we were actually awarded over $3 million worth of business. But for 3 years, I got no response whatsoever. So I think probably the value of persistence is something that I learned.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? You hear stories like that in sales all the time, and how many times do you have to how many touch points do you need until a sale converts and things like that? But most salespeople just don't have that patience and persistence to see those things through. And so they never see the fruition to everything they laid out in the beginning.
Absolutely. And I think just having a plan, okay, with this client, I called on them every quarter because I knew that if I could ever get my foot in the door, it could be something, they would be a good fit for what we did. Right. And so, and sure enough, after 3 years, probably, every quarter, at least 12 visits, and probably even more, that got an opportunity. So I think the value of persistence is one of those things that I wish that I had done from the beginning.
Right. You had mentioned a plan, right? Whether it was a contact plan or some sort of strategy to stay in touch. What did that look like from the sales aspect of your career, and how have you been able to hone that in and really get something that works for you?
Yeah, with what I do now with the Amada Senior Care, we get a lot of direction from our franchise on that. There's a specific number of call points that they recommend that you hit every day.
Yep.
And it works. I mean, I've just from doing it for many years, I know that if I'm staying in front of good qualified leads and I'm doing that regularly, I know that I'll be successful. So there are some things we can't control, but if for me, I have a number that I want to hit every day. I want to get in front of 10 good qualified clients, potential clients, or even clients that we're already doing business with. I want to get in front of at least 10 every day, and I know that if I do that over time, then I will be successful.
Yeah, simplicity is beautiful, right? You want to talk to 10 of those people. It doesn't need to be this intricate plan. It's something that works for you. You keep it simple. You can measure it every single day.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. So you had mentioned Amada. Let's pivot to Amada now. Before anything else, just describe Amada Senior Care, and then we can go from there.
Well, at Amada, we provide non-medical in-home care, mostly for elderly clients, and we help with activities for daily living, things like bathing, dressing. Help with feeding, help with mobility, really kind of non-medical. We can't administer medication. We can do medication reminders, but we're in the home sometimes 24 hours a day and a client, and we're just providing those things, meal prep, transportation, things of that nature that maybe they can't do for themselves anymore. And it's very rewarding to be able to provide those things for our clients.
Yeah, I bet. And it's absolutely, I agree with you. I think it's rewarding being able to have impact, things like that. It's also very different from your background, right?
Yes.
Logistics, transportation, sales, and now you're running Senior Care, a business in that industry. Why the pivot? What brought you to that change?
Well, the first thing, when my wife and I were looking at what we wanted to do with the rest of our lives, we were looking for something where we could make an impact on our community.
Okay.
And we looked around at a lot of different types of businesses. We visited different franchises, and really just kind of we met with the folks at Amada, and really kind of their values were in line with ours.
Yep.
And you can make an impact on your community in this industry. Also, it's a really good business because the demographics, with the population, with that age group exploding and growing, it's an industry that's favorable for us over the next 15 to 20 years.
Right. Yeah. And I've been ironically talking about this a lot with some people, the balance of both what you want to pursue, right? What you're passionate about, the impact in the community, but also there has to be a plan of monetization, right? If you just pursue a passion, and there's no opportunity from a business standpoint there, it's just a hobby, right? And vice versa. If you only chase the money, there's going to end up being no motivation. So it seems like you've been able to marry the two to create this opportunity for you and your wife that meets both the opportunity and fits what you guys value and what you want to do.
It does. Yeah. It's been very rewarding. The transition from the corporate world where, it's more, you're making money for the shareholders, to transitioning into something where on a very basic level, you can see where you make an impact on a person's life, on a family. That's been very rewarding for my wife and I.
Yeah. Perfect. So take you back to right before day one. All right. You and your wife know you're going to do this. You're about to start. What were you setting out to do?
Well, obviously, being new to owning our own business, we really just, again, the two things that we always kept in mind is serving our community and running a successful business. We wanted to really just, me being on the marketing side of things and my wife doing a lot of the actual helping provide the service. And we also have an employee that works in our office that helps with that. Just learning about how we provide good service on the service side. And then for me, just really getting out and meeting the different call points. I call on hospitals, skilled nursing centers, senior centers, and really just kind of starting to develop those relationships. Yep. And as we're getting clients through my marketing efforts, really learning how to perfect the service that we provide for our clients.
Okay, perfect. I like it. You worked with agents throughout your career at some point, right, with management, and it was still within the sales realm. So you were able to see people that could put together different plans, but you never ran your own business until now, right? You were
Correct.
in it, you were in the environment, but it was never your own baby, right? So what were some of your biggest unknowns going into running your own business?
Well, in working for larger companies, I had never experienced. In a small business, you have to learn to do everything. You learn to do a little bookkeeping. You learn to do, obviously, sales had been what I had done. The operations side of things, I had not done a lot of operations, so I've had to do a lot of that. I've done everything from actually went out and done some caregiving myself to scheduling, to just really kind of learning how to. The biggest thing the biggest challenge I think that I've had is just now I'm kind of the go-to person for everything.
Okay.
And learning how to deal with that, and also learning to hire for some of my weaknesses. There are things that as I've started my business, I've learned. I've gotten a better knowledge of what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and the things that I'm not good at is hiring. Learning to hire for those things.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've been able to set ego aside, because a lot of people that start off as entrepreneurs get caught up in that. They think that they can do everything, but a little self-awareness goes a long way. Recognize what your strengths are, go all in on those, and then hire for the weaknesses. Sure. That's a great strategy. So you're in here in the business for about 8 months, right? You've been running this for 8 months now. What are the biggest surprises? Not necessarily the unknowns that we were talking about earlier, but what has caught you by surprise in the first 8 months of the business?
Just the amount of hours that it takes to run a successful business. I'm usually in the office by about 7 a.m. and I'm hardly ever done before 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Sometimes I'm still on the computer after then. So probably the thing that caught me off guard was, just the amount of time that it takes. Okay. Yeah. And really, time management has been something that's it can be a challenge in this in the business, and really prioritizing, learning to prioritize the things that are the most important things in your business.
Let's dig into that a little bit more. What have you been able to do to start to feel like you're getting control of the time management aspect?
Well, for me, again, the numbers that marketing, I've had a lot of experience in sales and marketing. If I can get in order to hit my 10 call points per day, which is something that I want to do every single day. In order to do that, I have a lot of other responsibilities. Making sure that the service is good, making sure that I also do the intakes where I go in and sit down with the family and explain our services and get a care plan together for each client. So I have to do those things as well. But the biggest challenge for me, again, along the lines of time management, is getting the 10 marketing calls in every day, and juggling everything else that I have to do in the business. Kind of fitting that in around the 10 calls per day.
Yeah, everything revolves around the most important activities.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we've talked about the unknowns and the surprises, things like that. You're in this for over 8 months now. What's the grand vision for your franchise of Amada?
Well, and our franchise, kind of our mission statement is that we want to enrich the lives of our clients, their families, our staff, and our staff. And so, I think as long as we're doing that, obviously we have numbers that we want to hit. Right. We have to keep the lights on, and
that's important.
But I think if we're, I think as long as I can tell that we're making an impact on our clients, their families, and our staff, then I think I will feel that we're that we're doing what we set out to do.
Okay, fantastic. And how do you balance that? Because you said got to keep the lights on, right? Which is obvious. Any business owner is going to think that way. But you also want to make sure that you're having that impact, you're enriching the lives. How do you balance the grand vision with the day-to-day responsibilities?
I think the way that I do it is just always, as I'm talking to clients, as I'm dealing with our caregivers, always keeping in mind that mission statement, that that we're here to enrich the lives of our clients and our staff, and always remembering that the reason we got into this is to make an impact on our community. That in a nutshell, that's kind of why we started. If I keep that in mind, we have numbers that we have to hit. Obviously, I always, we have to keep our eye on the bottom line. But if I always go into every time I deal with a client or with a staff member, if I always keep just always keep our why we're in this, if I keep that in mind, then I think I can do both.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. So let's step back a little bit and get a little bit more philosophical. We're going to start with this. What does a perfect day include for you?
Well, again, as I said, the things, the activities that I do that are important that I have to do every day is those 10 call points. That's something that I always go back to. If getting in front of 10 good, for me, it's referral sources, because that's where we get our business from. So a good day for me is I start off about 8:30 in the morning, or I get out to my first call at about 8:30 in the morning. I get in 10 to 15 good calls per day, where I'm getting in front of a referral source, someone who can give us referrals. That usually, and that can vary. Sometimes that can take me 8 hours. Sometimes it may only take me 5 or 6 hours. Sometimes the calls last longer than the others, but definitely 10 to 15 of those marketing calls where I'm in front of a referral source, and then usually after that I'll start looking at the intakes that I have that day. And intakes where I actually sit down with a family. I've gotten a referral and I sit down with a family and I explain our service. Yep. I get a care plan together for the client, and then we and kind of get maybe get our start of care set up. and really just kind of finding out the needs of a client and getting everything ready for the start of care. So those are usually done later in the afternoon after I've done my marketing calls. Okay. Part of that, I also may have a marketing event. I go to several of those, maybe in an assisted living or in a skilled nursing. Okay. Usually 2 or 3 of those, maybe I would say 1 to 3 of those a week that we do. But the thing about this business is no day is ever exactly the same. But if I'm getting my 10 to 15 calls, I'm doing my marketing events, I'm doing my intakes. Those are the things that, for me, that a good day for me, I'm doing probably all 3 of those things. And then here in the office, the person in the office would have a totally different set of those of the things that they want, the activities that they want to do every day.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I love the simplicity, right? It's always nice to hear the same answer coming up with a few of these questions, because it shows your laser focus on what's most important, right? It's not the traditional answer of a lot of entrepreneurs that are just scattered all over the place. You know what needs to be done and you get it done. Mm-hmm. So I love it. So as a business owner, we face pain points all the time, right? One of the things you had already mentioned was time management. Mm-hmm. So what are 1 or 2 of those pain points in your life or your business right now?
Well, the time management part, going back to that, getting everything, getting those 10 to 15 calls a day can be tough sometimes because I get pulled in a different direction. Maybe I'm last week I was getting pulled in a direction of our billing and kind of getting a handle on that. Sometimes it's actually customer service, going out and visiting our clients, making sure that customer service wise, but really that time management of doing 10 calls a day every day. Yep. And focusing and always focusing on that. That's probably the hardest thing that I do, is keeping my focus on doing that every day. And if I know that if I do that, that I'll be successful in my portion of what I do with the business. I think another thing that is just delegating, learning not to do everything myself. Okay. We've started to hire office people and really training them and empowering them to do certain things, and just trusting them, to do those things, because as small business owners, sometimes we tend to, it becomes your baby. You kind of want to do everything, and learning to kind of let go and hire someone, a good skilled person, and just trusting them to do a good job. Yeah, that's been something that's been a pain point of mine is finding good employees and trusting them to do their job.
Was the delegation aspect not a natural thing for you when you got in as a business owner?
It's again, because I had always done a piece of the business, whether it be sales or whether it be management.
You had your responsibility in that spot.
Yeah, learning to train employees and get them to the point where they could do an excellent job, and then just trusting them was something that was difficult for me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last few here. So one of these that I want to ask is, if you were mentoring a business leader today, what would be those 1 or 2 lessons that you would want to make sure you got across?
I think small business, a small business leader, I think the first thing I would want to get across is just understand that you're it. In a business, you're everything from like I said, do some bookkeeping, do some sales, do some operations, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of just understanding that you're it. As far as the buck stops with you. Okay. And the second thing is something we just talked about is just teaching them early on that it's very important. You can't do all those things that I just mentioned you have to do. You can't do them all yourself. Learn to hire for your weaknesses, and find good people and just trust them to do that job, and maybe back off of it sooner and let them do it once you get them trained.
Yeah.
That would be something that I would definitely something that I would encourage people who are new to small business.
Yeah, pretty valuable lesson. So,
yeah.
Okay, it's called Success Defined, right? So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, and this can be personal, professional, combination of both, but how do you define success?
If I am, again, going back to the reason that we got into this business, if I can see that I'm making that impact on my community, I've always been competitive. I want to grow my business. If I can see, 3 years from now that we've grown our business, we're hitting our numbers, but that we're making an impact on our community, that we've made people's lives better, the elderly community in East Tennessee where we serve, and their families. If I can see that, I'll feel successful. I'll feel like that I've been a success.
Perfect. Building off of that success, you and I are sitting here 3 years from now having a conversation. What's happened in that time where you can look back and say that was a successful period in your life?
Well, Amada Senior Care of Knoxville has become one of the leading senior care agencies in the area, and we've been able to effectively serve our community. If we've been able to do those two things, I'll feel like we're a success.
That's great. I love it. Anything else that you want to leave the viewers or listeners?
No, I tell you, this journey from leading a very successful career, one that I was having success and doing my own thing, has been scary at times, and it's been kind of a wild ride, but it's been something that I haven't regretted. And I would encourage anybody that's considering it, if you have a calling to do so, to just make that leap and do it.
I love it. What a great way to finish this up. I appreciate you taking the time. Good talking with you.